chatting about these issues perhaps later on when we're having refreshments. So thanks again, Howard. And I would like us to welcome Derek Wall, our new international coordinator, to give us some of his thoughts and perhaps spark a little bit of debate and discussion as well this evening. Thank you, Derek.
The first thing I'd like to say is I think we need to congratulate Romain as standing for leader, and I think Romain would have been absolutely brilliant as leader, but what she's done, and she's doing so impressively here, is pushing the agenda of the Green Party in a greener direction and a redder direction. So a splendid ecosystem. I'm humbled by the support that I've had. I got elected on 46% of the votes. The candidate I beat got 34%, and we agree on everything. I'm embarrassed to have beaten Seb, an absolutely splendid candidate. I think the only reason I'm not embarrassed is I probably had slightly stronger words with Eamon Ryan at the last conference. You know, it's great when you're a Marxist to know that, you know, elections can be won. I'm also so proud to be in a political party with a working class leader. So what I want to do is talk about what is the political task, how do we advance it? And you know, I'm sure Will will have more to say on that, and his brilliant speech this morning, I think, really wowed people, inspired and got people going. But a kind of starting point is Frank Knight. And you might think, well, who is Frank Knight? Who is this guy Frank Knight? So Frank Knight, I think a misreading of his distinction as an economist, a misreading of his distinction between risk and uncertainty led to the financial crisis. Frank Knight, not somebody you'd see as a socialist, was a founder of the Chicago School of Milton Friedman, right-wing libertarian economics. But one of the things I'm interested in is when the right-wing libertarian economists flip and realise there's something wrong with the system. And there was a moment in the 1930s when Frank Knight decided that he was going to become a communist, that he was somebody who you could think through the consequences of things, and though he was a free market economist and went on and so on, there was a brief moment when he decided that capitalism wouldn't work and insisted that people should vote for the Communist Party. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the best thing to do in the 1930s, I'm not saying the rest of his career supported the left, but it's interesting that when you have free market economists, quite often they see that the system is flawed and doesn't work. So when we're talking about the political task is how do we change the economic and social system? Because if we look at capitalism, as we know, as Howard said, tends to destroy life on Earth. You know, that the more we consume, the more we throw away, the more we do of this forever and ever, that keeps capitalism going. That is completely unsustainable. Also, as Frank Knight identified, capitalism, it's not a sort of utopia, Adam Smith utopia of the market, and you've got all this competition and so on. You have inevitable concentration, and that means that you start with smaller companies, they become larger through economies of scale, and you have a system where it becomes more monopolistic and oligarchical. And again in capitalism, inevitably you end up with smaller and smaller numbers of people with more and more wealth, and that introduces contradiction. So if you look at capitalism, it's not an efficient, sustainable way of running the planet. So we have to get rid of capitalism, we have to look at alternative economics. Very, very good illustration of this is Gina Rinehart, who's often described as, you know, the richest woman in the world and so on. I think whenever we talk about the richest man or the richest woman, we should maybe substitute the word obesity. And of course Gina Rinehart has made her billions, you know, from ownership of mines in Australia, stolen from indigenous people, amazing devastation to the environment. Though she's worth 9 billion, she's saying that Australian workers need to take a pay cut. So what you have, it's like the fattest, most obese person in the world saying to people who are hungry, eat less food. This is entirely irrational. So for me, the key political task, you know, it's not a kind of, we've got to get away from a politics of here's a list of things we like, here's a list of things we hate, here's a group of villains, here's us as heroes, and we need to have some very strong political analysis. And I think at the risk of being reductionist, to me, the key moment of class struggle, the key moment of politics, the key moment of sustainability is the struggle over property rights. And I'm glad we've had our Clause 4 moment. However, when Clause 4 came in for Labour, that was a compromise. You know, so if we look at property rights, the shocking thing, the obscene thing, you know, the communist menace and so on, all of this kind of stuff, it's the idea that property rights should be broadly democratic. And you think back a couple of hundred years ago, and the idea of democracy, you know, was mob rule, you know, was something to be frightened of. I mean, I don't think we've quite got political democracy yet, but it's not like a scare word. And for me, when you talk about communism, socialism, maybe anarchism, Occupy, whatever, all of these things, radical green politics, eco-socialism, it's about having broadly democratic ownership of resources. And what we have in capitalism is not how hard you work. I mean, I've never seen you know, Gina Rinehart going out doing the mining herself, yeah? You know, fundamentally, it's about property ownership. And what we have to do is democratise property ownership. And that is the key political task. Now, I talked about libertarian economists flipping and becoming communists. And you might say, this is the story of Elinor Ostrom, who of course is our, you know, our greatest woman, you know, other than Natalie. You know, there's in fact a lot more to Ostrom than that, but she's come from a libertarian background. I cry every day, don't I, Emily, because she's no longer with us, and was wonderful. But she came from this kind of libertarian point of view and talked about collective democratic ownership. Wonderful. So that to me is the focus. And there is constantly a struggle over that. So if we look at ecology, when you have like capitalist private ownership of resources, you have to sweat them and degrade them. You know, you've got to get your forest, turn it into commodities, sell them, then steal somebody else's forest. We'll get on to indigenous as well today, so on and so forth. If you look at the crisis of austerity, what we have had is a financial crisis. You've also had imbalances in capitalism between China and America, and you've had resource prices going up. That kick-started the crisis. But an element of it is the financial crisis, and that's all about people owning things as shares, not having any love for them, not having any care for them, but property being owned on paper, on computer screens, and being swapped and sold and so on, faster and faster and faster, and people having no love for the property there. And ironically, what we have, of course, is zombie capitalism. You know, it's like dead, but it still walks amongst us. Or, of course, the other analogy we're familiar from, I think Mark's talked about this, was, of course, it's like Bugs Bunny, isn't it? That the Bugs Bunny runs over the cliff, and then, you know, they're still running over the cliff, not realising that they're on solid ground, and then plummets. I don't know whether that's in Greece or something. I mean, he talked about these things, didn't he? So, you know, we have this sort of capitalist system, which in a sense is already dead, yet what it does is it uses the crisis to sustain itself. So we've had this crisis essentially caused by bankers, massively magnified by bankers anyway, it's a systematic crisis. And of course this is being used and is excused by the Condems and the right across the world to actually marketise more, deregulate more, privatise more. Okay? So without going through all of the economics of it, it's about common sense. It's the idea, instead of capitalism, we have broadly democratic ownership of the means of production. That is not impossible. We see examples of that everywhere. I mean, of course, be aware that if we have mutuals and cooperatives and so on, and we still have a market system of capitalism, they then tend to self-exploit themselves to survive and so on and so forth. But it's this struggle for a broadly democratic, collective economy. Not an economy where the state runs everything, not an economy where a central planner tells us everything to do. That isn't efficient either. But it's always the struggle over property rights. You think of England, 1066, invasion, all of our property was taken. Now some people say, you know, I shouldn't be a Republican, I'm too hard on the royal family. You know, if they give us the stuff back, you know, I'm not going to persecute them, yeah? But, you know, all the way through you have people trying to monopolise ownership. Yeah, and you see, you know, I'm very critical of a lot of the stuff the European Greens do. But one, you know, thing which I think has been very impressive, you know, is like ACTA fighting, you know, they've been very good at fighting the way that the web is being commodified and enclosed and so on and so forth. So to me, you know, the moment of class struggle is property rights. Yeah? So, you know, we defend benefits, we work with trade unions, but ultimately it's about us owning the whole earth. Yeah? You know, it's the, you think of James Connolly and the Starry Plough, that there should be no, you know, we should be free from the earth here right up to the stars. Yet with capitalism, if they can sell the stars, they would. Now, how do we advance this great project? There are many, many things that we could say, but I think we need to have a specific politics, that you have this idea of the structures of capitalism. They corrupt all of our politics. Some things are difficult to imagine, but we're brave and we can imagine new things. You have the structures of capitalism that pull all of the things the wrong way, but the moments of struggle are very, very specific. And what we have to do is think of specific politics. So, you know, if we look at these elections, I think our intervention has been impressive. If you look tomorrow, you've got committee elections. There are many good people in this room who are going to run for committees. There are things that we need to change in the Green Party, so we need to specifically say what elections are coming up, what changes we need to make, and keep pursuing those. I think our politics has also got to be pluralistic, or we might use the buzzword polycentric. To me as a Marxist, it's a basic thing that you work with other people, and that in politics, inevitably, you have different names for things, you have cultural politics going on, and it's maybe difficult to unite. And what you tend to have, you know, is this very kind of human thing that the people who are nearest to you politically, you hate. Yeah? Okay? And, you know, certainly people say, well, this group's really cliquey, and this group's really cliquey, and we don't talk to them. Now, I think though there was some tensions, and I'm going to make one slightly sectarian remark, that I'm certainly not going to be working with Red Pepper again. I think they nearly really I think gender onions is absolutely shameful. But what's been great is we've had different left candidates. So we've had Peter Craney, we've had Remain, we've got Will, Alex Phillips, and because of the Green Party and STV, people have been able to vote for more than one left candidate. I really want to kind of applaud Peter Craney and Alex Phillips for the way that they've been open to us. Maybe controversial, but like I say, I've just been absolutely overawed by how generous Seb Power has been to me. And if I'd lost election, I don't think I'd be, you know, I wouldn't be as sweet as him. So the politics has always got to be pluralistic. It's about articulating other people. Outside the Green Party, we've got Socialist Resistance, Occupy, Go On, and so forth. So it's got to be polycentric. It's also got to be about education. And I think one of the problems with the Green Party is it's almost like the Labour Party's moved to the right, the trade unions have weakened, and you've got these nice people trying to do left politics. And what we need to do is like educate ourselves more, learn more, have more analysis. Key thing though tomorrow in terms of specifics, there's committee elections, they're very, very important. Go to the hustings, very, very good people here who may stand. You know, vote pluralistically, but go to the hustings, quiz candidates, make sure you're here to vote. You know, quite often on the left we complain because this and so on and so forth has happened, but we've got to organise. So in a way I've reduced it to internal Green Party politics, but we keep building the politics. I think we're also in an excellent position to start doing this internationally, to push the European Greens in a left direction, to actually make sure that we have some contact, say, with people in Iceland who've got a left-green government. Again, the kind of excellent work that Konstantin has been doing and Romain has been doing in terms of Greece. So, it's the way I always end, you know, praise Eleanor, praise Karl Marx, but educate, agitate, organise, and thank you for your support.
Very much, Derek Wall, and I'm sure that will give us enough energy to see us through the rest of Green Party conference and all the practical things that need to be done. So, open up from the floor, and the lady in red.
What do you say to people like, say, Tim Jackson, who says that we can be less capitalistic, or we can have nice capitalism? So we don't have to break with capitalism, we can be green without breaking with capitalism, we just have to have a different version of it. What's your message to those people? Should we flatten that one straight, or do you want a couple more coming up?
Shall I come back?
Yeah, flatten it, yeah.